If members of Toronto East York Community Council could please make their way to Committee Room 1, we have only a few items to deal with, and the sooner you get here, you know what I mean. What's next, 27?
Okay, here, I have one printed for you. Well, now it's happening. Yeah, we're, where's my notes?
Yeah.
You're at 81, right? No, I thought we did it.
We did 81?
Okay.
So we will go to 21 then, I guess. Yeah? Okay. Members, call the meeting back to order.
There was no way I could do that.
The next item we have scheduled for 1:30 is TE 14.21, request for fence exemption 334 Willard Avenue. And I have a deputant listed, Elizabeth Tiller. Elizabeth, are you here? Hi, come on up. Please just have a seat. And there's a microphone button in front of you. If it's lit up, then the microphone is live. If not, just press it and it will light up. Elizabeth, you'll have 5 minutes and you can watch your time on the clock over there on the wall to my right. Please, go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, councillors. I won't take a whole 5 minutes. I'm just here to voice my opposition to the fence that was erected, very tall fence that was erected at the back of my backyard. It's a very tall fence. My backyard is pretty small. It towers over us. And it's quite ugly, and it makes us feel like we're caged in. So I just want to ask that it come down.
Are those all your comments? Thank you. Are there any questions of the deputant? No? Elizabeth, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts today. Are there any other members of the public who wish to make it? You can go back to your seat now.
Thank you.
Are there any other? You're quite welcome. Are there any other members of the public who wish to make a deputation on this item? I see none. Are there any questions of staff? No? I'm going to move the staff recommendation to refuse the application for an exemption at 334 Willard. So that means the fence will not be permitted. And if I could just call the vote.
Sorry.
Staff recommendation to deny. All those in favor, opposed, carried. So the fence will not be permitted. Yeah.
Do I have a fence?
Item TE 14.22, request for fence exemption, 12 Sheridan Avenue. Are there any members of the public who wish to make a deputation on this item? I see none. Are there any questions of staff? No. This is Councillor Bailao. Oh, okay. Councillor Bradford?
On behalf of the local councillor, I can move recommendation 2 to grant.
Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Item TE 14.23, request for a fence exemption to the Toronto Municipal Code Chapter 447 for 94 Stanley Terrace. I have a deputant listed, Charles Dobson. Charles, are you here? You're not Charles. No? Are there any other members of the public who wish to make a deputation? Are there any other members of the public who wish to make a deputation? I don't see any. Are there any questions of staff? No? Councillor Layton?
On behalf of the local councillor, he'd like me to, or he'd like us to support an indefinite deferral.
Okay, so we're going to move an indefinite deferral on that one. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. On item TE 14.24, request for a fence exemption, 124 Park Road. I have listed Natasha and Neil Glossop. Good afternoon. So Natasha and Neil, if you wish, you could each have 5 minutes, or you can go together, whatever you prefer. Do it together? Okay, thank you. Sure. Just settle in. Someone from AV is going to come help you connect. There we go. So you'll have 5 minutes, and you can watch the time on the clock over here on the wall to my right.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
Okay. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. My husband and I are here to request the council deny our neighbour's application for exemption from fence height restrictions in the city bylaw. My family and I live at 128 Park Road. The masonry wall runs the length of our property line at the rear of our property. Both of our properties are heritage properties, and we have had no direct contact with this neighbour in several years. Before the wall was built, we had a 5-foot-high chain link fence which ran along the property line. It was a ravine naturalistic setting. Privacy was assured through both our and our neighbours' plantings on both sides of our property. Our neighbour started building his wall in 2016, and it was largely finished in the summer of 2017. He has, however, continued to add to the wall since that time. In April last year, over a period of 5 days, he increased the height of the wall to over 3 meters. This was done without our consent and without any prior notification. Several times during the wall's original construction, it was brought to his attention that the bylaw only permitted a height of 2 meters. He knew we would not agree to an increase in the height of the wall. We contacted the city last April and a notice of violation was issued. The increased height of the wall has had a very negative impact on our property. The wall is a massive and oversized presence in our backyard. It now feels like our backyard abuts a prison. From mid-November to May, with no leaves on the trees, it is truly a horrible, menacing presence. We've had people ask us where the guards are from the prison. This is a big photo of my husband next to the wall. He's 6'1", and as you can see, it towers over him. The plan in the submission that's actually with the report from the city is our neighbour's plan, and it shows the elevations from his side, not from our side. and from our side it is substantially higher. The increased height of the wall has had a very negative impact on our garden. It's drastically reduced light and airflow. Our grass and many plantings have died, and our trees and remaining plantings are at increased risk, according to our advisors. Many of our shrubs did not flower last summer. This has been difficult to watch as we are active gardeners. We previously submitted letters from Central Tree Care, who did a lot of the plant selection and trees after the wall was built for us, which details the risks to our garden and what has happened. There's also a letter from Dale's Gardening, which I hope you've had a chance to look at, that basically testifies to the fact that half our climbing hydrangea and all our grass died last year. So the previous photo was our yard in November 2017, after the wall had been built for several months. And here it is in November 2019. You can see the grass is all dead. We've tried to come up with, why someone would build a fence like this. These are the only things that we came up with. We don't think it's noise. We live a very quiet lifestyle and have never had a complaint from a neighbor. From a security perspective, we have lots of security, alarms, cameras, Avanti, etc. We have never had a break-in, and no one has broken into the neighbors from our property. And there are easier ways to get into his place. He leaves his front gates open all day and all night. Privacy, we have multiple mature trees that totally obscured our yard from the back. Also, his entertaining area is very set back from our property, so you can see the distances there. In 2008, when he put in his hot tub, we actually installed a hedge here to obstruct views from his hot tub to our kitchen, because we didn't want him looking in our windows. But since 2016, he has actually chopped down 9 trees along the property line on his sides that were not protected. And here you can see this is May 2018, before the wall was increased in height. You can see we can't see his backyard. We can't see his backyard. And this is autumn of last year after the height was increased. But as you can see, it's our hedging that is providing the privacy and not his wall. So in closing up, we'd just like to say, the height and properties of this fence have severely and negatively impacted our property. We do not have an enormous back garden, but it used to be beautiful. It was not dominated by a prison-like wall, and grass and plants would grow. We think this is a reasonable expectation of a garden, and a 2-meter-high wall, as allowed under code, provides anyone a reasonable level of security and privacy. So we would request that the council not grant the exemption today. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any questions of the deputy? Seeing none, thank you very much. You can return to your seats. I'm sorry, I can't quite make out the handwriting here. I believe the next deputant is Rick Clenahar. Rick, please come forward. I hope I got that name right. Maybe you can tell us how it's really.
McClenahan.
Okay, thank you so much. So, Rick, you have 5 minutes, and you can watch your time on the clock on the wall to my right.
Representing Mr. Barry here today, my name is Rick McClenahan. We submitted for an exemption to the fence bylaw based on a couple of things. The property is a historical property, one of the oldest in Rosedale. Currently has a fence or wall on the south and east sides of the property. The wall in question today is of the same nature but higher, and it goes along the back wall of 124 Park Road. So that's one of my things. I understand there is a bylaw of 2 meters or possibly 2.5 meters as stated in 447-6. I have several drawings and copies of the property, but I believe that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions of the deputant? Seeing none, thank you for your time. You can return to your seat. Are there any other members of the public who wish to make a deputation on this item? Seeing none, are there questions of staff? No? Councillor Layton?
Yes, thank you very much. I'll move recommendation 1 from staff to refuse the grant of the exception of the application.
All right. So the motion to refuse, all those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Next. Oh, lost track of my paperwork here. 1425, request for offense exemption to the Toronto Municipal Code, Chapter 447 for 146 Bolton Avenue. Are there any members of the public who wish to make a deputation on this item? Seeing none. Questions of staff? No? Councillor Fletcher? Where'd Councillor Layton go?
Yes, I believe you have a motion to grant that.
Yeah, I'll get him back. Councillor Layton, I need you for a vote.
We'll just find this
Councillor
on the
Layton,
screen.
need you for a vote.
Waiting for the motion.
Very sorry to do that, folks. We're tight on quorum right now.
Pardon me? Oh, I'm granting the fence exemption.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
so on the motion to grant the fence exemption, all those in favor?
And this was
Opposed?
part
Carried.
of the rezoning. That was in the actual rezoning report, so that's why I'm approving that in that way, Mr. Chair.
Okay,
Thank you.
so that takes us, I believe, to 27? Yes. Item TE 14.27, 1521 Queen Street West Zoning Bylaw Amendment Application Preliminary Report. Anna Teresa, you're up.
What's this for?
Hello.
Hi, so Anna Teresa, you've got a couple people with you. Is it 5 minutes each?
No, it's just me at this moment, but Tom has signed up to depute. But they would like to sit with me as I depute, please.
Okay,
Thank
just
you.
wanted to know. So you have 5 minutes. You know the system.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Go ahead.
My name is Ana Teresa Portillo. I am the president of the Parkdale Neighborhood Land Trust. I work as a community benefits organizer for Parkdale People's Economy at Parkdale Activity Recreation Center. I have lived and worked in Parkdale my whole life. My mother has run a small business for 21 years, only 1 block east of 1521 Queen Street. Even though the City of Toronto wants to forget the tenants who lost their communities, who lost their homes and their health, the Parkdale community will not and cannot forget. I remember seeing my neighbors' personal belongings scattered along Queen Street. I remember seeing the pain and shock in people's eyes. Now, I would like to hold a moment of silence for our neighbors and community members who, as a result of being evicted, lost so much, like Clive, who hung himself, leaving a note referencing Bazaar's mass violation of our community. Can you please lower your voice? I would ask us all to stand in silence to remember the tenant who lost his leg, the tenants that cannot be here because of the upheaval of their lives in 2015 at the hands of Bazaar continues to take its toll to this day. And for the tenants that are lost in the wind, missing from our community. I'd like everyone to take a moment of silence. You can't see that. Can we all stand, Tom and Mute? Can you stand in 1 minute, please? Thank you. It must be said that the preliminary report only mentions this great violence Bazaar Development Group has had and continues to have in our community in 3 bullet points. In the section on the pre-application community consultation, we recorded this consultation and posted it online. Community members spoke with a clear voice. They said no. No to any and all proposals from Bazaar unless they provide a legally binding contract that states 3 specific things. Number 1, they agreed to replace the 27 dwelling units they originally detenanted, that the tenants who originally displaced be given the first right of return, and that they return at the same rate that they were unlawfully evicted at. Let us be clear. The City of Toronto's attempt to omit and downgrade the impact this potential development has had and will have in Parkdale will act as proof of the city's complicity. Every document, every line of reasoning that omits the real impact of this development and seeks to whitewash what is
I have to ask
happening
you for your final thought, please.
will speak loudly of the mix of incompetence, corruption, and empathy dysfunction that is currently gripping the City of Toronto.
Sorry.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions to the deputy? Seeing none, thank you. Tom, you're down to depute next. Did you want to say something?
Mr. Perks,
Yes.
you know me.
Yes, I do.
Is his mic on?
I've always been straightforward. What was done to us and was done to others, I don't know if you remember Clive. When he was displaced from there, he went to another place and hung himself. Why? Do we live in a society where because you got money, you can wipe away everything? Or are we supposed to be united and be people and help one another? This is not right. People are putting up buildings left, right, and center. People like us, we can't afford those places. We're on ODSP, we're on welfare. I mean, like, in reality, okay, I'm not blaming you, I'm not blaming any of the constituents. But where does it stop? You know, make something happen that's gonna help us, you know? It's really a shame. I've lost 4 people that I know of through suicide. Clive was one. I can go on. And there'll probably be more. I have a friend, he lost his foot. Why? Because he developed gangrene while he was staying at the hotel, and he didn't realize it. He's walking around now with 1 foot. Come on, I mean, like, realistically, do you think I want this man to have an apartment building? He didn't take care of the building he's got now. He displaced everybody. He threw out stuff that, well, I don't know if he threw it out or the guys that took it walked out with it, but a lot of it went, and a lot of it was mine. I had gold ingots. I had other valuables that were taken, watches, stuff like that. I was told, oh yeah, you can come back and get them. Where? I haven't seen one thing come back to me that belonged to me. And I mean, like, it was not cheap stuff. This was given to me by my parents. That rips my heart. Other people, maybe we don't have much, but we do have one thing. We have pride. We have pride in our neighborhood. We have pride in the people that live there. And I'm not going to stand by and watch some guy that's got money walk in and say, well, you know what I mean? It's not fair. You guys got to think before something drastic happens. And it will happen. You're going to start losing people. And I don't want to see, because people are on ODSP or on welfare, going to the wayside and dropping dead. We've lost too much already. Don't make us lose more. This proposal should not go through. It should be stopped here and now. Because all it is a money grab. Kicked out the tenants now. He's got this shabby hotel going, which is not really, I don't know how the city passed this. This is not a hotel. I run a hotel. I know a hotel. I can go through everything in a hotel. That place, not one thing in there follows the guidelines of a hotel. I've run hotels, the Hyatt Regency, the Walker House Hotel, the Prince. I mean, like, this is garbage. I'm being honest. I mean, like, we all sit here together now, and I bet you there's not one person in here that's going to deny him because he's got this. And we got this. That's being honest. That's the way I feel.
No,
Gord, I mean no disrespect to anybody in the council here, but I'm only telling you what I feel.
absolutely, Tom, and that's your right. Thank you very much. Are any questions for Tom? No? Thank you so much. Are you David?
My name is Jason Broder.
Jason, would you like 5 minutes now?
Sure, I'll take
Okay.
5 minutes. I have no conclusion other than to say that when we were evicted, it was done seemingly room by room. And I was there and a patient at Dunn Medical Center. I had been sleeping outside, and the landlord there took me in because I lost my toes to gangrene. I got frostbite sleeping on the bench at University on Queen Street, which is fairly close to Queen. I guess I don't wander too far. I've been living here for about 10 or 11 years. And while I was there, I had to walk to Dunn Street. That was fine. I had therapeutic boots and the like. But I had a chance to meet Tom and Paul and Clive and Vinny and a few other people that were tenants there. And I really appreciated having a rent that I could afford on ODSP, the $535 a month. And it was sort of like a family there. It was a place where I could get better after seeing a lot of indifference, I guess, to people sleeping on the street and the like. And Mr. Perks, I'm a great winter camper. I've spent many winters in Algonquin, but the city is very, very different temporally. And even though I got frostbite and gangrene, it was just too bad that I had to move so quickly. I've seen a podiatrist and the like now. I'm in better condition, but I would like to return to that family. I would like to return to a place that took me in after there seemed to be a crisis in so many other housing avenues to follow. It was either a lot of paperwork or just being shunned by different workers. So as one of the original tenants, I didn't ask for money. I didn't ask for anything in the original suit because I figured, well, I'm just a tenant there and I don't need to know the landlord's business or the rest of it. So for me, I thought, landlords are like this. Rather than ask for something other than an apartment or a different place to live, it seems to be sort of contradictory to making good terms with your landlord. But I see this has gone on. It's been many years right now. So I decided to finally make a showing and saying I would just like to go back to living there. Thanks.
Thank you. No, you've had your time. Are there any questions of the deputant? Are there any questions? It doesn't work like that, Anna Trace. It doesn't work like that. Okay. So there are no questions. Thank you very much for your deputations. You can return to your seats. Joshua Barn.
Hello. So my name is Joshua Barnes. I'm Executive Director of the Parks and Neighborhood Land Trust. Also a resident on Beatty, so I live just a few doors down from this address. So I'm here both as a community member and also a resident who's going to be impacted by this development. I was there when the unlawful eviction that you've heard about already occurred. It's maybe important to state some facts about that. In 2015, from what we understand, Bassar Development, developer, purchased 1521 Queen Street West, and soon into their ownership in the summer of 2015, they delivered what you would call legally an unlawful eviction notice, asking the tenants there to leave within 7 days. They claimed that folks there were hotel guests when in fact they'd been living there, many of them, for quite a long time, multiple years. And a lot of the tenants had been actually having their rents paid through ODSP directly to the landlord. So there is a paper trail. So what we knew at that time when we saw this happen is that we thought, oh, they're trying to get the tenants out so when they build a new or propose a new structure, they're not going to have to undertake rental replacement. They don't want the liability of tenants. And they feel that they think as developers come into our community that they can just erase people, erase us. But as you've seen here today, we are organized. Our community is willing to stand up against this type of behavior from investors in our community who are willing to hurt and harm our fellow residents. And so since then, we've actually been really working with the city to try to address the type of process that's reflected or exemplary of this eviction. I should say that the eviction was deemed through a court process to be unlawful by the province. The province actually investigated this, and the developer pled guilty to 4 counts of unlawful eviction. There's actually a legal term to it. I can't remember the exact wording. In any case, the prosecutor understood that there were actually around 27 people living in the building prior to the eviction. However, the prosecutor decided to select 4 select tenants who would be willing to go through a longer court process rather than bringing all of those units, all of those unlawful evictions forward. So I just want to say there's a legal precedence here that these were tenanted units, tenanted dwelling rooms, and that the tenants were legally tenants. And so the developer's coming forth today, and if you look at the housing, there's actually a housing statement report by Bosefields, and it actually tries to suggest that in fact the site was a hotel and that there weren't legal tenancies. I just want to show you their the way that they try to make this case and some flaws in it that need to be focused on. And I would hope that this committee would assure that planners take this analysis. But they create a timeline of the use of this site, which ends in 2011. And then they omit every other piece of data that exists at the city and beyond past that date. And then they pretend that suddenly we're in 2015 when they evict everyone, and they ignore that fact as well. So, I mean, they've just been very blatant in their disregard for the real facts and to try to just only tell their story. And then we had an initial document that they put forth prior to this, prior to today, which suggests that they have participated. At the bottom, you'll see they actually say that they've undertaken cooperative consultation process with the city and community members. If anyone was at that meeting, it was 100 residents yelling at them for about an hour and a half, asking for them to be held accountable, for the city to hold them accountable for their past actions and for this application not to be approved, not to be taken. And then there again, the developers underlined, you'll see there, are proposing that, that their application be looked as in force, so policies in force, and ignore the other planning processes that have been underway in the neighborhood to deal with equitable development. The last thing I'll say is that this development is asking for only 3 parking spaces. According to the city zoning bylaw, there's a requirement for around 51.2 spaces under the residential, just for the residential component. I live on Beatty, and I want to let you know that there is not enough parking. There's a church on the corner that doesn't have parking.
Josh, I have to ask
and
you
it
for your
fills up.
final
The streets
thought.
fill up. All the residential buildings around us on Queen, none of the buildings on that block or either of the blocks beside it have any parking. There
Thank
is
you very
not
much,
parking.
Josh. Thank you. Are there any questions of the deputant? No? Thank you. Mercedes. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mercedes Sharp, and I work as the planning coordinator for the Parkdale People's Economy at Parkdale Activity Recreation Center. I'm actually going to be taking my 5 minutes to share the story of a former tenant of the Queen's Hotel who unfortunately couldn't be here due to health circumstances. You've actually heard his name mentioned in a couple of the previous deputations. His name is Paul Snyder. You can see him here. Unfortunately, due to compromised health, and as you've heard, loss of a foot, he could not make it here today. I'm going to share part of the history that was actually omitted from the Bousfields letter in the Housing Issues letter from 2015. My name is Paul Snyder, and I have experienced at firsthand the suffering and displacement that often results from a neighborhood's rapid, unchecked gentrification. My meager savings ran out in 2013, forcing me to relocate from a lovely rent-controlled bachelor apartment in Riverdale to a lowest common denominator of a flop house called the Queen's Hotel in South Parkdale. It is there that I was introduced to the sorts of stressors which plague the impoverished and the marginalized. From bedbugs, roaches, mice, and rats, to major repair issues, to negligent landlords, the Queens had it all. And yet I was grateful for a place to live, however substandard, as I had come within days of homelessness. Moreover, I discovered a little community at Queens. My fellow tenants had all experienced poverty or mental illness or addiction, and they understood my struggles without needing them to be explained. The Queens billed itself as a hotel, but in point of fact, it operated as a de facto rooming house, sheltering 20 or 25 of the community's most vulnerable residents over a period of months and years. There were no short-term guests, no reception desk, no amenities common to even the cheapest motels. In 2015, when the so-called bizarre group of companies purchased the Queens, my home became a place of instability, fear, intimidation, and uncertainty. Even as company representatives personally assured us that our homes were safe, behind the scenes, machinations were underway which would ensure the opposite. A campaign of harassment ensued. The hot water was permanently turned off. The bathroom doors were removed, depriving us of privacy and dignity. Dozens of frivolous calls to police were made against several of our more outspoken residents. Same-day evictions were common, including the evening expulsion of a woman whom they knew was facing a spinal cord surgery the following morning. Finally, one day I arrived home to find a notice to my door informing us that we were being evicted with 6 days' notice. The warning concluded with a promise to toss out any and all personal possessions left behind. Those 6 days were hellish and chaotic. The company actually went so far as to hire an enforcer, in this case, an ex-motorcycle gang thug, whom they paid $500 cash to hang around, intimidating us. The company's contention was that as a hotel, the Innkeepers Act legally afforded them the right to expel us with no forewarning. Well, we fought them, taking them to the landlord-tenant board and charging that the Queens was functionally a rooming house and that eviction was thereby illegal. It was eventually settled in mediation. This move did not stave us of our expulsion, however. On August 7th, 2015, I arose to find the biker goon standing outside the front entrance, thick tattooed arms crossed, guarding against any incursions by media, our MPP at the time, Sheridan Ave, or any other outsiders. We had to be out at precisely 11 a.m., and those who failed to complete the move by then were prevented from finishing the job and summarily expelled without any of their personal effects. Several lost everything they owned. owned. Of the 20-odd tenants, 3/4 of us wound up on the street or in the shelter system. I was one of the lucky ones. At the 11th hour, I landed a dreadful room in a squalid rooming house. The woman with the surgery date wound up convalescing in a pup tent. A good friend of mine was assaulted twice in the shelters, resulting in a broken jaw. One tenant sadly ended up committing suicide. With bad credit and spotty references, there are still a few of us 20 months later who have yet to find stable housing. And this part is for council. This is the human toll of unchecked gentrification. It ruins and costs lives. It is a cruel and amoral free market force which wreaks havoc on the lives of the disadvantaged. Sadly, it appears there's very little political will to meaningfully address the issues created by gentrification. In South Parkdale, we're out here on our own. The Land Trust and others are trying to keep the area livable for us in lieu of any action from City Hall or Queen's Park. We need leaders who will be proactive and consistent in protecting the city's vulnerable
Mercedes,
citizens,
I have to ask you for your final thought.
who will put their endless rhetoric into action. And you can find the rest of Paul's story online with the PNLT.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? No? Thank you. David Cullen? Hi, David.
Thank you. My name is David Cullen. I'm a volunteer with the Parkdale Land Trust. I'm here to read a statement by one of the neighbors of the development, Adrian Delena. Councillors, my name is Adrian Delena. I reside on Beatty Avenue in the Parkdale neighborhood, just south of the site of this proposed development. I'm also the community food coordinator at Greenest City, a charity that operates in Parkdale. I apologize I cannot be here to address the council in person. Parkdale is a community in Toronto that has a deep history. The neighborhood is punctuated by landmarks that write this history in the built environment that is Parkdale. Some of these landmarks speak to the optimism and resilience of this community. The number of growing small businesses from newcomer communities, the dedicated collection of agencies and organizations that serve the residents here, and the compelling articulation of community autonomy as illustrated by the Parkdale People's Economy and Community Benefits Framework they have put forward. We can also see this history in the transitions from large single-family homes turned rooming houses and now luxury micro-bachelors. We can see glimpses of this history in the sheer volume of those who rely on some kind of support for basic food and shelter, and perhaps most presciently, the effects on the community of the currently fever-pitch real estate market that has tightened around this now desirable neighborhood. Another landmark on the map of Parkdale is the former Queen's Hotel at 1521 Queen Street West. I do not want to speak on behalf of those who were forcibly and unlawfully removed from their residences at this site to make way for the application before Council today, as I don't think I could give their ordeal the depth it deserves. But I can speak as a resident and a community worker. Please review that history and their experiences yourself. But it is plain to me that this developer has acted in bad faith, first in its unlawful repossession of units that were providing housing for vulnerable residents, and now in their benevolent characterizations of the proposed development. When they pled guilty to 4 counts of unlawful possession of rental units, they acknowledged their own predatory behavior, but seemed to justify it through a conflagration of excuses, denials, omissions, legal technicalities, and most obscenely by the claim of contributing to the housing stock of the city. They paid the paltry $14,000 fine mandated by their guilty pleas, but that does not absolve them of their place in this history or provide solace for those who had to pick up their belongings off the street and find new housing. It is simple. A profit-driven developer is using the failures of our housing system to justify their predation on some of your city's most vulnerable people. They are also requesting that they not be held to their basic civic responsibilities to replace the affordable housing stock they destroyed by way of the revisionist, convoluted, and self-serving history that they have put forward to complement their proposal today. It is crucial that Council hold Bazaar accountable for their actions and craft a way forward that does not only seek to expand a luxury cosmopolitan housing stock, but fundamentally promote the right of the city's residents to live in dignity and safety. Otherwise, we have again allowed a part of this community's history to be written by the highest bidder with the most deficient ethical practices. Please take the time to look at the ground level history of the site over the past 5 years and decide if this is how you want to develop communities. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Are there any questions? No? Thank you very much. Are there any other members of the public who wish to make a deputation on this item? No? Okay. Are there any questions of staff? No? All right. I'll speak to this briefly. I'm going to be moving the staff recommendation. So I want to thank the members of the community who came out and who've come out to so many meetings on housing and land use and community development for years now. I wish the rest of Toronto City Council had been here this afternoon to hear this story and to hear also the strength of the community bonds in Parkdale. It's very powerful. Thank you. City staff and the planning department are mindful of this story. They are doing work to make sure that as the application goes forward, that we get the best deal possible within the law for rental replacement. There's hard work to do there, but I can assure you the rental replacement planners are on this, and I know that they've spoken with some of you directly. I also want to make sure you're aware that at least the councillors in this room take this kind of rent eviction very seriously. Councillor Fletcher chairs a committee that we struck with herself and Councillor Bradford and I to see if the city can step up and try to fill some of the gap left by a provincial government who treats tenants as second-class citizens. We'll make sure that you are part of those conversations. I know many of you have been, but it's very sobering hearing what you've had to say today. And I wanted to thank you for coming out. Okay?
Just have a question of the mover.
Sure. Yeah.
Just have a question of you, Gort, as the mover. What we're doing, I just want to be clear today that we're not approving this development. We're only taking the parameters out for the community consultation. The staff have to do that in a planning application.
Right. What we're doing here today is a statutorily, a legally required step. Whenever anyone makes a development application, you have to go out and do community consultation, no matter what your view on the development is. And what the report we have in front of us today does is start that formal consultation. That's all it does. Okay.
And so the comments from the people who deputed here today, because this is part of a consultation, the staff have heard all of that.
Yeah, and I note that the planner on the file is present, and I've also provided contact information for many of the people who've deputed today to the planner doing the work on the rental relocation portion.
So we're not approving this when we vote. We're approving to go.
I think you've communicated the point,
Just
Councillor.
checking.
Yes.
I need to be clear
Yeah.
what my vote is here today.
Councillor Layton.
Yes, thank you. I'm just going to speak very briefly. I think this is a sober reminder of just how terrible the division of powers are in the provincial municipal planning framework in this province and in this city. It wasn't that long ago that because of evictions from single-room occupancy buildings that Councillor Perks and myself and others were struggling with, that we went ahead and directed the city staff to prepare a policy that would in fact protect these single-room occupancy tenants from this exact thing, from taking some of the most affordable stock of housing in the city of Toronto and keeping it available with redevelopment within the new development. And unfortunately, because of the power imbalance that wholly favors the province, mostly favors developers, and at the bottom of that, pecking order is the municipality and tenants. It's just very unfortunate. And again, a reminder of how upside down planning in the province of Ontario is, giving municipalities who have to manage housing crisis, have to manage local transportation, have to manage local delivery of services, how we are constantly being passed over in order to maintain the power at the provincial level, and in fact, even more recently, give more power to developers. And this is just one of those sad reminders. We haven't seen the building yet that I was a part of. I think it's actually, we're refusing the application that I was a part of on King Street. I'm no longer the local city councillor, so I don't have up-to-date details. But we fought to try. There was 100 rooms in that building. Finally, when we finished our canvassing, we were only managed to ensure that 10 tenants stayed and knew their rights and knew not to take what was a disgusting buyout package by the developer or the previous landlord. I'm hoping that maybe this will change in time. Maybe with us taking a human rights approach, some other governments will start to clue in and say it's just not fair and it's not within keep taking that approach. But it's not going to happen until the actual rules change from the provincial government that we'll be able to protect units like this.
Okay. Any other comments? Councillor Wong Tam.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. And I want to also just thank the deputants for your remarks. I recognize that this is a very difficult and personal matter. And by way of you coming out today to share your story, even though it may seem like the room is rather empty, I do want to just acknowledge that it was heard. And sometimes these are the most difficult conversations that we have, especially since we're only looking at what seems to be an early onset process called a preliminary report. Then there's the going out to the community to have that sort of more formalized discussion. The lack of planning controls that we don't seem to have when it comes to single room occupants, hotels, sort of larger rooming houses is part of the reasons why we're in such a state of difficulty and challenges when it comes to sort of more affordable units. I've got the Inglewood Arms in my own ward at 295 Jarvis. I know that there are about 100 residents there, 100 households that are living in fear about what happens in the future. And again, it's a situation where we had the preliminary report, we had a community meeting, we don't have the final report, and it's actually now sitting in front of the Ontario Municipal Board in LPAT, along with the rooming house bylaw that the City of Toronto passed that now has to go off to defend. And most recently, we heard about the big acquisition and sale of the Fillmore's Hotel in the adjacent parking lot, and that is not necessarily a rooming house, but certainly I know that even though it's designated as a hotel, and I believe it was run as largely as a hotel, there are still what I know to be people who call those hotel rooms homes. And once again, even though it's several years after the 295 Jarvis Inglewood acquisition and even the zoning application as it's moved forward, we're still not settled with respect to new and stronger rules at the City of Toronto. So it's been a number of years, and more of what we see as affordable types of homes do fall to the wayside simply because we don't have the rules that we need in place, because even after we've passed it, we then have to go off to defend it as it's appealed through another approval process. So I just wanted to acknowledge and hold some space in today's council chamber, community chambers, is to recognize how difficult those stories are when you come forward and tell them. And just to say that I know that everyone here is listening and extremely energized to continue to fight, even though it is a very steep and uphill battle, which we will do together. Thank you.
Councillor Bradford.
Thanks very much to the chair, and want to thank all of the deputants for sharing your experiences today. Very impactful deputations, as you've heard from everyone here on the committee, and emblematic of a huge problem that we're facing in Toronto. You know, when I listen to this, it just becomes so acutely apparent that if the intent of the policy provincially and through the City of Toronto, if the intent of the policy is to protect rental units, protect rental tenants, then certainly when it comes to these sort of circumstances, we are missing the mark. If we want to protect rental units, then we need to protect all rental units. And clearly, people are capitalizing and taking advantage of the language in the legislation where there are blatant loopholes that persist. But again, it gets back to the intent of the policy and what we actually want to do with the policies, which, you know, we have broad consensus here, certainly on this committee and at the City of Toronto, and yet in practice, the legislative framework obviously makes that very challenging for us to do. So we're not where we need to be. You know, I know Councillor Parks, Councillor Layton, Councillor Fletcher, Councillor Bilau have been working on this, Councillor Wong-Tam for many years now, and there's a lot of work to do. I'm new to this discussion, but I do appreciate you sharing your experiences. It's very impactful, and it's a conversation we're going to need to continue to have at council, and frankly, really turn the screws on the province, because this is an issue that's not going to get better. It's only going to intensify. And with the housing challenges in this city, that acuity is only going to increase. So I did want to thank you for coming down. Still a long road ahead, a lot of work to do, but thank you for sharing your story.
Councillor Fletcher?
I will just also thank everybody for coming and sharing what are difficult stories, your own and of your friends, people that are no longer with us. And whoever said they moved from Riverdale, from a great place, then moved somewhere else and now get renovated. I think that was in the story that you read. And that's just happening. We don't have that much control, but we certainly are there to bring whatever we can to the table from the city side. And I think more quickly, if we can, than we have been. Because dealing with people who are getting rent eviction notices, who just leave. That's happening a lot. They're afraid. They think, oh my God, I have to get out of here, rather than knowing their rights, rather than backing them up, rather than saying, you stay, you have a right to return. And all the old parts of the city, all along Queen Street, with all of the mid-rise development, are forcing a lot of these changes into communities that have been stable communities for poor people, for low-income people for a long time. Even all the services are all there. So somehow the policies that we put in place around mid-rise this is an unintended consequence of clearing people out of communities. And I don't know how to go back and look at that, but I'm all for that, because when we said, let's build European style, let's build 8 stories, let's have as of right 6 stories, I didn't think it would mean as of right shutting down places where poor and low-income people are living. And I do believe it's an unintended consequence. It wasn't forecast that that might happen. And that is happening. Are we catching up? We're going to come up next to the TCHC application for those tenants who are in Toronto Community Housing. That landlord has a requirement to bring people back. There is a right of return in that new development. And maybe that should be our focus. There's always a right to return baked into development applications. This is probably close to an as of right mid-rise building. How do we go from that to something that includes housing? And to be able to hold landlords, those who want to move into these areas, to be clear on the requirement for affordable housing, the requirement to meet the needs of that neighborhood. People who have created the character of Parkdale, created the character of Queen Street East for a long time. And it's just, I feel powerless in how, on Logan, how 20 people get rent-evicted out of there so quickly. It is, you just feel like you're fighting your way with very few tools, very few weapons to fight your way through that. But I'm really happy you're here, and it always inspires me to find those ways to make better things happen. Thank you very much.
Councillor Bilau.
Thank you. I didn't hear the deputations, but since the beginning of my term, I always said that the most difficult situations that I've had to deal with is when somebody walks into your office and asks for help with housing. And used to be that a lot of those conversations were people on the waiting list and looking for more affordable housing. Let me tell you that over the last few years has been more and more tenants being evicted from their homes, their communities, places that they've lived and have their families for many, many years. And at the same time, in a lot of these situations, tenants being exploited. A lot of situations of, I have people renting closets. I have people being put into homes with 15, 17 people. I have people putting into homes where the fire department is saying, we can't allow this. There's bars on basement windows. We can't allow this unit to continue. And it is the most desperating thing I've had to deal in this job is how do you deal with these situations and how do you act fast enough with the housing situation that we have in our city. So I think that these tenants and people that come through with these stories, they are just the tip of the iceberg, and they exemplify the need for action and quick action on these issues as soon as possible, because unfortunately we're dealing with more and more of these dire lives and dire situations. And I'm sure that I am just one of 6 councillors that are here today, and I think every one of us could tell you about these situations that we face, and that we feel so powerless because you want to get out there, you want to be able to help people, and we need to move quick with these policies and see what we need to ask the orders of government and really put pressure to get these things moving a lot quicker, because these are people's lives affected in the city every day. Every single day we hear these stories more and more.
Thank you. Sorry, Tom. Okay, so on the staff recommendation to consult, all those in favor, opposed, that carries. Sure. Our next item is TE 1433. There was a request for a deputation, but it's been withdrawn. Are there any other members of the public who wish to make a deputation? No? Councillor Fletcher?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I have a series of motions related to this that are going up on there, which have to do in particular with community services and facilities, including, as you may well remember, the pool that we had to reopen after a year. It's in there. School facilities and how available they will be. Also, is there any way to increase the affordability in any way of the existing units or the regular market? Any way of doing that? And then some of the traffic issues that were raised at the public meeting and to me in writing, and public realm and access issues to be reviewed in the report on the rezoning. So I just want to say quickly on this one, I'll just speak for a minute. I just want to welcome Carly Bowman as the new manager for the East End. 2 wards, used to be 4 as we know, but now it's 14 and 19. Very excited to have you on board. Congratulations. And also thank Paul Muley and his team for getting us this far, and all the other city staff, as well as Toronto Community Housing and Context Developments for reviewing what was at the beginning a proposal to rebuild the 120 TCHC units, of course with the right to return to those units once they've been demolished and rebuilt, and some, I don't know how many, 500 and some, 561, I guess, condo units. And through the Affordable Housing Office, Housing Secretariat, in particular Sean Gadden, with help from Councillor Bailau, that was rebaked in order to come up with the larger number of rental and a large number of affordable and replacement on this site. It's a mix that the Auditor General said that's the type of mix that's necessary when Toronto Community Housing is revitalizing to add the affordable housing. So I'm very proud of the community and all the work everybody has done to get us to this new standard. And in general, everybody understands that this is a great site, lots of support, lots of community support that was garnered early through canvassing, talking to people, bringing this out to them, and those many people concerned about Toronto Community Housing tenants, that they would be treated well and have the right to return, and that was explained that that is how that works. And I want to thank Councillor Bradford for his support. It's right on our border, and it will be a development that will complement businesses and everything else throughout all of Queen Street East. So There's still more to go, but we're at a very important threshold today. Passing this, getting this done, and getting on with the development, that's my commitment now that we have the proper mix there. And I do want to just personally thank everybody who got us to this place today. I'm happily move these amendments and the staff report.
Any questions of the mover? Anyone else to speak on the item and the amendment together? All those in favor, opposed, carried.
I'd like a report.
Oh, a recorded vote has been asked for. All those in favor? Councillor Layton, Councillor Wong Tam,
You're gonna find
Councillor
yourself
Perks,
against one
Councillor
of these
Fletcher,
things
Councillor
one time.
Bailao, Councillor Bradford. That is unanimous.
And I'm sorry, I forgot to thank Linda McDonald, who's been so helpful in all the steps.
Linda!
Our
Sorry, did I do that out loud? Oh,
Toronto and East York, big cheese. Thank you very much.
thank you. Okay. I think that takes us to TE 14.46.
To reconsider.
We need to reconsider it? So I'll move a motion to reconsider. All those in favor, opposed, carried. And this is Councillor Bailao. Wallace Emerson.
So we reopened the item,
Yeah, I did.
and now I would like to move a different motion. So we're waiving the polling and going straight into installing speed humps,
Okay.
just to give you some background.
Yeah, I mean, polling doesn't work.
Nah,
We all know
doesn't work.
that.
Doesn't work. So we're going straight into installing it.
Just write a note to Councillor Bradford to remind him that it doesn't work. Okay. So, on the motion, all those in favor, opposed, carried. I couldn't resist. I couldn't resist. I'm a terrible man. 54, item TE 14.54, realignment of permit parking area 8D to exclude the development located at 1151 Queen Street East, Ward 14. Ward 14. I know, right? So this is 1151 Queen East, item 54.
Yes. Oh, I thought I'd done that one, but whatever I'm doing is up there. 1151. Oh, it's fixed. I had it fixed. Yes, it's now been fixed.
Needed to add words. It's like the curse of being an elected official. No, I needed to add some words.
No, I didn't. I had to fix it. Staff had to fix it for me.
That's right.
There it is. It's been
Okay.
fixed. Thank you very
So
much.
on the, and this is amending the item? Yes. So we'll take the amendment and the item together. All those in favor, opposed, carried. Item 14.59, signal timing review, Pape Avenue at Danforth Avenue and Pape Avenue at Lipton Avenue.
I'm just
Ward-
letting that go. Approve that.
So move
Information
approval.
received
All
for
those in
information.
favor, opposed, carried. Item TE 14.61, traffic calming speed humps, Dingwall Avenue, Ward 14.
Motion to have that back in April, please.
So we're going to defer that to the April meeting. Item TE 14.81, cycling safety on Dundas, implementation, evaluation, and next steps, Ward 14.
Did that, but I'd like to vote again. Thanks.
No, we did that already. Yeah.
We did that?
Which one are you guys talking about?
81.
The new, yeah, we did that.
No, I think you started it.
We did not do it.
No, but I don't believe we did.
I made a speech about
The
thank you.
clerk
Yeah,
and
it was a
I,
recorded vote.
the clerk and I both feel it was not
My
done.
friend, it was a recorded vote. And I had a big speech about thanking staff. It was great.
Counselor?
I can make it again.
Councillor, there is no record of council having voted on it.
Willard has a recorded vote.
You know what's easy? You know what's easy?
Okay,
All those in
record that.
favor?
All in favor,
Okay,
record
a
it,
recorded
please.
vote has been requested. Councillor Layton, Councillor Wong Tam,
But
Councillor
I was
Perks,
gonna
Councillor
speak
Fletcher,
again.
Councillor Bailao, Councillor Bradford. Oh, the item's finished. Okay.
Can I thank transportation staff one more time for that? Councillor, no, okay.
No, you're not allowed to. They've had enough praise and love for one day. You don't want their heads to get any bigger.
Why is there something in the draft? It's okay, we're finished so early. We'll take a minute.
Oh, there's new business, 84.
Councillor Layton has a new
So I need a motion to introduce item 84. Councillor Layton. Speed humps on Burnfield Avenue in Ward 11. Councillor Layton, you have the floor.
Yes, oddly enough, as we say no to polling, this one says immediately go to polling. And so, hey, you know, some like polling, some don't.
Yep, there you go. Okay.
Great way of notifying.
So on the
the community
recommendations in the
without
letter?
paying for it.
Yes, we did. I did the two. I've already done that vote. Boy, when Ellen starts getting... Oh, okay. On the recommendations in the letter, all those in favor, opposed, carried. Okay. So I believe that completes our business.
I think so, yes.
Yes?
Once we get quick in and make sure it's done.
Okay.
Because it's a bit- While we have you here.
So we're just going to prepare the bills.
Yeah. Before I have to call you back.
If you just stay in your seats a moment longer.
Can I get a glass of water?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. Okay.
But you have to turn out your light and go to bed after that.
And then we're, who wants to do it?
I washed my hands in the last 10 minutes.
Okay. What time? So Councillor Barrow has workers.
Councillor Bailao, you have a motion.
Yes, I do. That the Toronto and East York Community Council pass and declare as a bylaw a confirmatory bill to confirm the legislative proceedings of the Toronto and East...
Councillor Bailao,
I gave you,
you do not have a motion.
No,
I do not have a motion.
Bradford
It's my
has a
fault.
motion.
you
Councillor
have to
Bradford?
read yours first. I beg your pardon.
Yes.
Sorry. I didn't have my glasses on.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That Toronto and East York Community Council pass and declare as bylaws Bills 263 to 280, 282 to 286, and 288 to 298, prepared for the March 12, 2020 meeting 14 of the Community Council.
All those in favor, opposed, carried. Councillor Bailao, now you have a motion.
Now I do. That the Toronto and East York Community Council pass and declare as a bylaw confirmatory bill to confirm the legislative proceedings of the Toronto and East York Community Council, acting under delegated authority at meeting 14 on March 12, 2020.
That was great.
All those in favor, opposed, that carries. That concludes our business. Thank you so much to the staff for the usual high standard of excellence in supporting our work. Thank you to my fellow councillors for being good souls, cheerful companions, and otherwise all-around great people.
Way to go, Gordon. That's a tough one. Holy cow. I feel so bad for you.
So, yeah. 3 of the people got evicted.